Australia is a vast country, 3 million square miles of territory. A country of big cities, a country of scattered towns and small communities, of people who live and work in isolated places. People who must have means of communication.
Right, boss.
Now we can make them want that hardwood, Bill. Better get it loaded.
Telephone, telegraph and mail services for the Australian people. Mail for lighthouse keepers. Mail for sawmillers and dairy farmers living on the coastal rivers. Mail for the sheep and cattle stations on the mountain highlands. Mail for the snowbound towns of the Southern Alps. Mail across the plains to the people of the inland. Mail by plane spanning the continent from Brisbane to Perth, Hobart to Darwin. Communications for the Australian people, from the mountains to the plains, from the outback to the city. "10,000 post offices in every part of the continent are the nerve centres of communication services in Australia.
Food parcel Greenwood. Can I send fish through the post?
Raw fish, madam?
I take it down to the parcel counter.
How much, Rich? Put the email sticker on the left-hand side. Where can I book a ferry call to London? Driver's licenses?
Behind the post office services are the men and women who make them work,
4 emails.
serving the stamps, the money orders and postal
5
notes,
shillings postal note, please.
paying pensions and repatriation allowances, issuing wireless licenses and tax stamps, taking parcels, registered letters and telegrams.
Letter right or email? Martin typing, time deal.
Linemen servicing cables deep under the city streets, and endless miles of overhead wiring. Telephonists on manual and trunk line exchanges.
You there on Gary? 6 minutes. FA 2883, Mr. Johnson.
Melbourne, Mr. Brown, your call from London is coming on.
One moment, Sydney calling. They're BW8401.
Technicians servicing telephone exchanges and automatic switchgear. Equipment to handle 1,000 million telephone calls each year. Letters, newspapers and parcels from the 4 corners of the earth. Far different now from that day just over 100 years ago.
From the great extent of Sydney, reaching from Dawes Battery to the Turnpike, a distance of 3 miles and the number of intersecting streets, it is desirable that letters put into the post office should be correctly directed, and that clerks, shopmen and servants should cause as little delay as possible to the letter carriers when they call for delivery.
Today, 1,300 million letters every year. Today, 21 million parcels every year. Today, 34 million telegrams every year. Telegraphists operating Morse keys, and the faster machine printers.
Please send express delivery.
The threats on rail today, 24 bags, superphosphate.
Best wishes for a
Your 24 bales ex-Gundagai sold at 107 pence.
Tube services carrying telegrams direct to newspapers, press agencies and stock exchanges. This was the post office organization that in 1939 had to be mobilized for war. On land, sea and air, the armed forces depended on communications, and the post office played a major role in training and supplying technicians and equipment to all services. But the needs and destruction of war strained the services almost to breaking point. The post office was unable to cope with all civilian demands, and the war's end brought further problems. Expanding cities and towns, new houses and new industries, and increasing population, all needing communication services. The lack of materials that held up housing plans also affected the post office. Already short of building space, of trained staff and equipment, the annual turnover of the post office had doubled that of pre-war years, yet demands were still increasing.
The line is always engaged.
We can't get prompt service.
Country towns need more lines.
What about the city?
Country districts want more mail deliveries.
That was the aftermath of war and the urgent demands of an expanding
What is
nation.
the post office doing about it?
To meet this situation, post office experts worked out a plan to spend £42 million on new and improved services. And today, the plans have gone into operation. New buildings, post offices and telephone exchanges to meet increased demands. Trenches and tunnels to take cables for new telephone and telegraph lines. Training technicians, engineers, mechanics and linemen, operators, clerks and mailmen, men to work the communication system. At post office research laboratories, scientists test every phase of communications work, even checking the effects of borers on poles and cables, the vibration of wires and metal fatigue, and the durability of equipment. Australian factories now make cables, switchgear and telephones, equipment that once had to be imported. Overloaded manual exchanges are replaced with automatic, and automatic switchgear is installed in new telephone exchanges. Cables are laid for new services, cables to carry local phone calls, voice frequency circuits for trunk line calls, and channels carrying up to 68 machine printer messages on one line, a faster service for telegrams and trunk line calls.
Mr. John Purvis, please.
He's just gone out.
Oh.
Today, in every corner of the land, work goes forward to restore post office communications to their pre-war efficiency. Linemen and technicians are connecting and installing over 70,000 new telephones each year, twice as many as in any pre-war year.
Testing new line LF1280. Would you come up on it, please?
In city mail branches, more automatic mail handling equipment is to be installed, speeding up mail sorting and saving labor time. Mail deliveries are extended in outlying country districts, where the mailman still provides a personal service to the settler and his family. To break the isolation of rural communities, 650 rural automatic exchanges are to be installed, self-contained exchanges for country people, a 24-hour automatic telephone service going out completely equipped to isolated areas. And for crowded overhead wires menaced by storms and bushfires, new routes are made, cables laid underground, trunk line cables linking the cities and towns, reaching out across the mountains to the plains, from the city to the inland. reconstructing and rebuilding modern communication services for the Australian people.
Is that you, John? Ah.